Welcome back. Here we are in video number 5, or the third video that we've been dealing with color. I'm Rick Trummer here at Mid-South Color Labs, and I'm so happy to be able to bring you another edition of our video series. So in this series, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking an image and actually finding the unique highlight and shadow area that we're going to want as printable data, and being able to transform and make color corrections on an image to make sure that they're going to work well with the lab. As we've learned from previous videos, both in video number 3 and number 4 that we've been working on, the first video, of course, we set up all of the different controls inside Photoshop in curves, but that also, of course, transfers to any of the adjustment layers that you're on as we set our highlight and shadow point and moved our gray point. In video 2 of this series, we've actually gone in and we took an image that didn't have a Macbeth color checker and we made color correction to it. And now in this series, we're actually going to be doing a custom check of color and being able to go back in. Now, with all of these different items in color, you want to make sure of one thing. Once you make the color correction, what we've done is we've gotten you 90% color corrected when you use these click balance tools. That last 10% is completely up to you to make those adjustments. I always say it's the last 10%, or it's completely up to you to screw up any way you want as far as your color is concerned. And I always laugh about that because we all have different color bias that we like on our images. For me, I like my stuff slightly warm. Some of you may like a little bit more of a pinky tone that you might be using. We call it digital pink, but it's definitely a tonal quality that a lot of you like. Some of you may like your stuff a little bit cool. So when we neutralize an image, when we use click balance to neutralize an image, what we're doing is we're color correcting it based on your screen calibration. So if your screen is perfectly calibrated to the lab, we know that when we click balance, it's going to set that up as an absolute neutral point inside your computer system. But again, that's only the majority of the story. Once we do that, then a lot of us like to make slight color adjustments to be able to put our bias onto that, and that's what we're going to show you today. So what we've got to do with this image, again, this image was shot inside Photoshop, or inside the camera, and exposed using program mode. This entire series has been what the camera is shooting. You can see it's slightly underexposed. There's a lot of backlight that's coming back here, and so the image itself is slightly underexposed. Some of you may have done this inside of Lightroom and fixed it there. Some of you will say, well, I want to get the image processed and go straight into Photoshop and then come here. So I'm going to show you how to do those fine points of color. So even if you did make a slight color correction inside Lightroom or ACR application, once you're in here, we can do the fine points or the fine tuning. Neither of those programs are going to allow you to click balance on a black and a white point. They only show you neutral points. So you won't be able to correct for exposure if that's what you're doing unless you're moving the slider, and you won't be able to correct for your Dmax, what's controllable at the lab, unless you're in Photoshop. You'll be able to add contrast. You'll be able to bring your exposure up, but you won't be able to actually know that it's going to be printable data. So in this image here, what we're going to be doing is inside Photoshop, we're going to make the correction for this image based on some knowledge of this. First, what we have to do is we have to go in and we have to figure out where our area is that we know is a safe zone. Right here, right behind her, you can see there's a little warm area of light. This is a highlight area, and the highlight is a little bit warm. That means that there was warm light coming in. So if we click on this point for a neutral point, what is it going to do? It's going to overcompensate for that little bit of yellow that's there, and the image is going to be very, very blue. Again, likewise, over here in the upper right corner, we know that if we click balance up here, the image is going to be slightly blue. Let's go ahead and prove that theory by going into, we'll just go into the curves area for this exercise. and we're going to click in. Let's just click on a highlight point, and let's click on that yellow area that we have. You can see that it's neutralized it, but you see how blue the image has gotten. Let's again use that in the upper right corner. Again, a highlight area. You can see it's not as blue, but it's still blue. You can see the lights coming through is still blue. So if we're going to make corrections like that, we've got to be very conscious of exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. If we went into, let's say, a neutral point, and we clicked on the gray eyedropper and we went into the eyes, you can see that it's going to take our image very, very warm or very, very yellow. For those of you who are looking at that, you're going, whoa, is that way too yellow? You're absolutely correct. It is way too yellow. So we have some opportunities to be able to see, and we've got areas in here. You can see there's kind of some streaking lines that are yellow going through here. We have a lot of gray over in this area that we could click on that we would be able to get in there. But let's find our very, very unique different areas that we have to be able to control inside there. We're going to be going into something called threshold. So let's go into the adjustment layer under threshold, and you can see that it takes your image into completely black or white. This is exactly what it's supposed to be doing. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the slider down, and we're going to find the area, the last black area here, that we want to use as a click point or as a point to control our Dmax. So right now we're looking at this going, well, we've got some data down here in the lower right corner, but we've got a really nice area right in here that we can use. If you hold down your shift key, you'll notice that the eyedropper turns and there's a little plus point. We're going to click on that area there, and it gives us a number 1. We're going to use that as our density point. Now, let's go back to the properties area, and we're going to come back to the highlight side. Now, a little bit of knowledge about this image. We know that this upper right area here is very, very warm. We know that this area down here is very warm. So what we're looking for is kind of the highlight area that we know is not so warm, which is probably right about in here after looking at that image a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, hold down the shift key, click on that neutral point or that highlight point that's up there. We've selected a point. Now, we've got those there. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete that, and we've taken it out of the equation. We've got these two highlight, we've got a shadow point and a highlight point that we're using, and we're going to use those to actually neutralize the image. Now we can come into curves or levels or whatever you're doing, and we're going to take our black point and click on our black point. That's our Dmax point. That's the point in which we're adding the contrast. We're going to use this point as our point of neutrality in the background. And then those are the 2 points that we're going to be using for these 2 areas. So here we've adjusted for the color balance, and we've adjusted for exposure along with that density point that we have in there. So as we looked at this in click balance, we're looking at it going, I like this color, I don't like it, I'd like to make it a little bit warmer or cooler. This is where that last 10% is completely up to you. So what we're going to do is, instead of using RGB now, we're going to go into the color channels individually. So for the sake of this exercise, I like my stuff a little bit warm. So I'm going to go into the blue channel, and I'm going to grab from the blue point, and you can see I just clicked a little bit, and I've warmed up the image just a tidge from neutral. So if I turn on and off that, you can see that I've just warmed the image up just a little bit from neutral center. Now, if you like it a little bit warmer, you can pull that point just a little bit. You can see I'm barely moving this little, the little movement inside there, because I don't need a whole lot of movement to be able to show that little warm light. So that's exactly kind of where I want to be. So on and off, you can see this is a little bit too much. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to pull that little warmth out of there, and right about in there. I'm digging it. There we go. So this is where you're going to add your color bias. If you're someone who likes to add that kind of digital pink, maybe a little bit more magenta for you, what you're going to do is you're going to pull that center point a little bit to the right, add a little bit of pinky feel to it. If you're somebody that likes a little bit of blue, maybe you're going to pull that image in the blue channel, you're going to pull it to the left and set it to the right like I did. So this is where you're going to add your color bias, that last 10%. We've neutraled the image. We've got that all taken care of, and now we're going to be adding this. Now, once you have this curves adjustment layer, you can drop this on all of the other images that you might have taken in that series. But this is just one of the areas, one of the many ways that you can correct for color very, very simply inside the exposure. It's not a huge movement. We've just increased that exposure by a little bit. If you want to, again, look at the exposure and bring that up, we might want to pull this. Again, now we're going to be in RGB, and we're going to pull that control panel up a little bit. But again, we're trusting the screen when we're doing this. So if that screen brightness level is not set correctly, we brought this up in video 3, which was the original video that we started with. If that monitor is not calibrated correctly, we're going to have as far as brightness is concerned, this is going to be very difficult to do. We have to have that brightness control set, because if we get this back from the lab and it looks dark, that means that we've exposed it incorrectly. Again, I'd like to thank Mid-South Color Lab for allowing me the opportunity to get out here and talk to you a little bit about color management, how to set up your computer, all of that great stuff. We've got so many other videos that we're going to be doing in the very near future. And I hope that you're finding these very, very interesting and something that's useful that you'll be able to use inside your studio. Again, I'm Rick Trummer, coming to you right here from Mid-South Color Lab. Thanks for watching.